very grateful and
Yes.
really thanks and appreciate uh, your review to us about different aspects of veganisms and what is the philosophy of the veganisms. Okay, so that we can know more detail about it. And you also mentioned very many aspects from spiritual, from environmental, and as well for health issue. I have a few questions I would like to ask Dr. Will Tuttle. One thing is regarding the lab-grown or cell culture meat, which they claim is not involved in killing or environmental more friendly. Okay, so there's two questions about it. The first question is about cell culture meat. Okay, they say paint, they still create paint from the animal to take the cell from the animal, and the cell can keep on cloning after that. So even some medicine also come from animal source, just like insulin, etc., on some hormone. What is your view in spiritual side on cell culture meat? There's our first question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eddie. And that's a really important question. And I don't want to be overly dogmatic in my answer. But I would say overall that I have serious doubts about the ultimate benefit of using meat or other products like medicines that use animals. I think the old saying is the ends do not justify the means. And we're just moving into this idea for the very first time of lab-grown meat. We don't really have anything yet commercially available, but apparently in Singapore, there'll be some coming out soon, and maybe in other countries it'll be coming soon. But we don't really know the consequences of this, and I've looked into it quite a bit, and I think on the surface it looks good. It looks like, oh, now we can make real meat, like animal tissue meat. We can grow it in a lab, and people can eat meat, and it won't take so much. It'll be so much resources. It'll be more efficient. There won't be any suffering to animals. So it's like this great idea. But there are some problems. One is there are some researchers who've looked into this whole process, and they've said that from an environmental point of view, there are problems in getting a lot of the required inputs. Some of the inputs are not that easy to get, and it's not totally known now also whether you don't need to use quite a bit of animal product like bovine growth serum and other things that come from dairy cows to keep the bio laboratory machinery running. So there's also scientists who have said that the risks from this of any kind of biological contamination in these laboratories could create terrible things, could create diseases that we don't know about, could create products that could be very dangerous to people. So there are many risks to, I think, to lab-grown meat that we haven't really figured out an answer to. And then the other, my other criticism of it is that it's still meat. It still has this idea that we should be eating the flesh of animals, and we don't need to. I mean, we can eat grains. We have tofu. We have tempeh. We have seitan. We have many plant-based foods that are high in density and high in protein. Plus, we have many other wonderful vegan foods already, and we already have like the Beyond Burger, for example, which is just grains and beans. People who are experts cannot tell the difference between real the chicken and this chicken that we have now that's just made from plant-based ingredients. So I think that, you know, maybe it will help, but I personally, I'm not excited about it, because I think it just creates this idea of humans eating meat, eating the flesh of other animals, and we're not designed for that. We don't have the teeth for that. We don't have an urge to just go out and kill animals. And so I'm hoping that we can help people can transition to plant-based ways of eating without the lab-grown meat, through education and through just understanding that there's so many beautiful foods that don't need to have these big laboratories, you know, which are hazardous. They have to be super clean. In these laboratories, you know, you can't go into one of these laboratories that makes lab-grown meat without a whole suit on. You have to wear a whole, like a space suit. You can't get any germs anywhere. It's very artificial and unnatural. And we can just have gardens and fields and grow rice and beans and corn and vegetables and grain, eat that, and we get all the nutrients that we need. We don't need anything else. I mean, you know, it takes a lot of money and investment. It has risks. It has a lot of risks, I think. So that's my basic feeling. Yeah, and the same thing about medicines. I think we should try to have, we shouldn't use animals. We shouldn't test on animals. We shouldn't harm animals for medicines. We should have medicines that are more natural, herbal based, and really focus on cultivating a healthy body and mind. Now, here I am. I've been a vegan for 40 years. I've basically spent no money in the medical establishment. I haven't gone into a hospital or I haven't never bought a drug in any drugstore ever in 40 years. And I think if we're living our lives in alignment with our values, if we're eating healthy, if we're having healthy relationships, if we're exercising properly, eating organic is very important. Organic, whole foods, plant-based foods. That's a wonderful foundation for health. And if we are doing the best we can to take responsibility for our own health, then we don't have to harm animals, make them sick, and steal their bodies and minds to make ourselves healthy. I think that's a dead end. It's not a good idea, and it's part of the same problem. To be healthy ourselves, then we don't have to really worry about getting sick or making other people sick. This whole idea of contagious diseases, I think we should see that what's really contagious mainly is fear and love. So if I'm being loving, I'm spreading love. I'm spreading, if people get close to me, then they're going to get healthier and they're going to feel better. If I'm really afraid and angry, then people that come around are going to feel more afraid and more angry and more upset. So those are the things that are spreading, I think, our quality of our consciousness. So I think the most important thing is to cultivate a positive consciousness of health and live that, be very simple, natural, and the earth will provide us with everything we need to be healthy. We have to get into harmony with nature and with each other and stop abusing animals and thinking we can harm them and get healthy ourselves. That's never going to work. We can't make animals sick and then we're going to be healthy. If we make them sick, we're going to be sick. That's how it works. That's what the Buddha taught. Whatever we sow, we reap. We can't sow sickness in other beings and create all this complicated, violent methods and be simple and happy. It doesn't work that way. That's a great question. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you.
Dr. Will, I think you gave a very great answer on that. And I think I learned one very important aspect from your answer. And your answer actually have answered the second questions. Actually, second questions actually, I would like to ask you, because now more and more people are more aware of health and environment. So many people turn into vegetarians or even vegans, okay, because of the health and environment problem, okay? And they're more aware about this. So when talk about cell culture meat, okay, or lab culture meat, they promote in a way that at least is less environmental impact, okay, and this is more healthier compared to normal animal farming because of the less hormone injection and everything. Probably you can answer further on this question. What do you advise for those vegetarian people, okay, who turn into vegetarian because of environmental and health, okay, not because of the spiritual side, but you do teach me one thing is that whatever things when we promote a plant-based diet to people, you finally you still need to link finally to the spiritual side or to the moral side. Because without the spiritual and moral side, okay, people can do all things just for the self-interest, interest. Okay, so these are one good things I learned from your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's great. You know, if people do more research and they learn that, for example, you can feed between 10 and 12 people eating a plant-based diet on the amount of land it takes to feed one person, the standard sort of Western diet. I mean, it's so wasteful. We have to cut down trees. We have to take huge amounts of water and petroleum to make milk, it takes 1,000 liters of water to make 1 liter of milk, for example. I mean, it takes so much water. It's so wasteful. It pollutes water. It destroys the soil, destroys the jungles, the habitat. We've seen it. I remember going to New Zealand with my wonderful wife, Madeline, many years ago, well, not that long, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And she had been in New Zealand about 30 years before. And she kept saying, you know, we've got to go to New Zealand. It's the most beautiful country in the world. It's all the beautiful forests and the clean water and everything. So we finally went there a few years ago, and it was terrible. I really was shocked because in the 30 years since she had been there, they had grown a very large dairy industry in New Zealand. They have one of the largest dairy companies in the world is based in New Zealand. And so when we were there, we drove all over both islands, the North Island and the South Island, especially the North Island. They had these huge areas that were clear cut. They cut down all the forests. They had cows grazing everywhere. The streams were muddy and polluted and full of cow manure. It was just so ugly. It was ugly and polluted, and they were making a lot of money, I guess. And it was funny because I remember when I was in Taiwan and people were eating dairy, and I remember asking the people, I said, well, in Taiwan, you don't have any dairy here, do you? And they said, no, we get all our dairy from New Zealand. And then I went to New Zealand like a few weeks later, and I could see the result. And in a sense, there's so much destruction of the environment. So I think if we care about the earth and about nature and about wildlife, that's somewhat of a spiritual and ethical motivation in caring about future generations. But of course, we also care about ourselves because we want to have a beautiful earth. We want to have clean water, and we want to have clean air and so forth. So the self-centered motivation of just wanting a better earth for ourselves and a better environment for ourselves, that's good, but we need to have a deeper motivation, I think, for caring about future generations and wildlife and ecosystems and indigenous people, and starving people, all these others, and the animals themselves, caring about them. And I think that when our motivation grows to this deeper level, then we don't ever have we don't just say, well, I'll just have an ice cream today. It won't, just one little bit won't hurt anything. If I'm only doing it for my health, or if I'm only doing it for the environment, then maybe I'll have an egg and I'll have some milk and I'll have a little piece of meat now and then. It's no big deal. But if I know that if I have a piece of meat or some milk, it's directly causing a cow to be harmed or a pig to be harmed, I'm not going to do it. I mean, it's so much more liberating when the motivation goes to beyond just myself to caring for others. Then there's this, one is at 100% committed, which is actually very liberating because there's a sense of just being relaxed. It's like, I'm not going to steal from someone. I'm not going to go out and sexually abuse someone because I want to. maybe now and then I'll sexually abuse someone, or maybe now and then I'll steal from them, I just feel like it. No, it's like, we know not to do that. It's the same thing with when we see animals as beings, and we see ecosystems as beings. When we see indigenous people and future generations as beings, we're not going to harm them unnecessarily. It just becomes much more clear that we're all interconnected, and that we can live a life that reflects a certain purity and a certain kind of humility. It's like, I'm not any better than someone else. Why should I harm them? We're not superior, really. We're all in this together. And I think that attitude is liberating, not only for us, but for animals and for everyone. And that's why I think it's beautiful to see spiritual teachers, spiritual practitioners exemplifying a life of kindness and compassion. And then people who are maybe not so spiritually oriented, they'll see that there's a better way to live. And that example will inspire them, hopefully, to want to do something in a more positive way. And then if we can make it easier for them, I think that's important, make it more available. If we can somehow have it in all the stores and in all the restaurants and easily available, that makes it easier. But in the beginning, it's difficult because people have to go out of their way to get the organic and the vegan. But then the more we do it, the more we share, the more we educate, the more we exemplify, there's more people doing it, and it just gets easier. So it's really about reaching a critical mass, I think, of people who understand and who are doing this, and it makes it easier for everyone else. So that's the path that we're on, I think, of just trying to increase the momentum and increase the awareness and deepen the motivation. Thank you.
Very great and inspiring answer. Dr. Will Tuttle, there's one thing's quite controversial in medical community is that it's related to the research using animal study, and the system of research in healthcare is set up in the way that it start from a lower level of research, okay, successful, then we test on animal before we test on human being, okay. And some, for example, in cancer research, sometimes they even inject the cancer cells into the animal to make it become cancerous before we give treatment again. Okay, so what it developed a lot of controversial issue regarding that. Okay, of course, there are people talk about that we human born in this world, we are constantly using the world resources. No choice, we survive in this world. We're constantly using human resources. But if we're using some resources, okay, the benefit for human mankind by sacrifice something else, okay, so that's how they feel it's justifiable. But of course, it's very hard to say a right or wrong answer. But I just would like to, I'm interested to know about your view on that.
All right. Thank you. So I personally, I am very opposed to vivisection. I'm opposed to using animals at all for any research of any kind. I think we have no right to use them for research, that it always harms them and it always harms us. In the long run, it harms us. I mean, really, you look at what's happened in the last few hundred years. I mean, we've been testing on animals more than ever, and we have more disease than ever. We have more disease and more people taking drugs, and more heart disease, more cancer, more diabetes, more liver disease. Diseases are worse than they ever have. We have people now with getting more vaccinations than ever and getting more diseases. More autism among children, than more nervous diseases, more psychological illness. This is a big mistake. There's two types of science. Science itself, I think, is potentially a noble undertaking of acquiring knowledge through doing both inductive and deductive reasoning and experimentation, and then having communities of researchers check their results with each other. But there's also dark science. And I think most of the science today is dark science in a certain sense. It's science that's used to profit corporations, to get control over nature, to dominate animals, to exploit animals, to dominate people, to exploit people, to track people, to get more profits for industries, to get more minerals, to get more wealth. It's using science to dominate and exploit animals, nature, and ecosystems. And this kind of science, unfortunately, it actually, we think that we're getting more knowledgeable, we're getting actually less knowledgeable. What I see actually happening is that there is an ever increasing amount of ignorance and misunderstanding in the world, and that increasing misunderstanding and increasing ignorance is organized and is propagated and is educated through schools, and it's called science. And it's an increase in ignorance and an increase in misunderstanding, and it leads to an increase in violence, an increase in disease, increase in injustice and inequality, increase in a few people dominating everybody else, and using science to do that. So I think thousands of years ago, especially in Asia, there were tremendously wise people who lived lives in harmony with nature, who were exemplifying to us ways of living in harmony with nature, where they lived long lives in health and harmony. And the science that they had was in harmony with nature, and a lot of it was internal. They were exploring their own consciousness, and they were exploring harmony with water, with air, with herbs, with energy systems. They knew things that we can't even imagine. I think they had much more wisdom in the past in many ways. And our system, especially its Western-based science, in many ways is based on violence and on domination of the sacred feminine dimension of life, and is based on dominating and exploiting animals and using animals to get knowledge. And it actually makes us, the more knowledge we get, the more stupid and foolish and ignorant and violent we become, to the point where we're just all sick and using and creating massive weapons that can wipe everybody out and destroy all life on Earth. And that's the result of animal agriculture, because animal agriculture is primarily a Western, from the West. I mean, it's primarily something that was specialized and created in the West. And it's spread throughout the world because of Western, industries like McDonald's and Burger King and the IMF and the World Bank. And there's a lot of that happening. So I think, well, it's not to blame anyone. It's like, maybe, this is how it was supposed to happen. Maybe this is what humans had to go through. I don't know. But the basic idea is, here we are, we're in a situation we can see. I think clearly we should be able to see that experimenting on animals gives us these drugs, which they're causing more misery and suffering than ever. I'm so glad I haven't taken any drugs in over 60 years. I've stayed out of the whole system, and I would never take a drug. I just wouldn't do it, because I don't want something that was tested on an animal. I would rather die myself. I'm not going to do it. So I don't want my life to be dependent on killing somebody else.
Good answer. Thank you.
Dr. Will, I'm just mindful of your time. We've got another 15 minutes more. How are you for time? How are you for time, Brother Will, Dr. Tuttle? How are you for time?
Yeah, I'm good.
You're good. Okay,
yeah.
right. Because we got two other panelists.
Two other questions. Okay.
Question as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Eddie. They were very interesting questions. And also for the answers I've given, and it resonates so well on the one that we shared early this morning. Maybe discuss about consciousness, about inner awareness, as well as sort of mindfulness on our part. Now, relating to what Dr. Eddie asked and what you've said, I've got a question here from one of the participants the husband was having chemotherapy, and it was chemotherapy for every 2 weeks, and his hemoglobin was really reduced, was unable to do the next chemo unless he boosts up the hemoglobin level up. Now he was advised by the doctors to take beef to boost up the hemoglobin.
Take what?
I mean, what would
beef?
To take beef. Beef, yes.
Yeah, okay.
To boost up the hemoglobin. So what what would you do in a situation like this?
Well, you know what I'm going to say. I mean, I wouldn't do it. You know, I'm not going to, kill a cow so that I get more hemoglobin. I mean, that's what the doctors would say, of course. You know, they'd say, they might say, well, we've got these, kill the dog. You know, if they say, well, you got to kill, you've got to kill a dog to get the energy, to get the meat and the energy to be healthy, then the person might say, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to kill a dog. But why would you kill a cow? We have to think of it. There's another way of doing it. Like right now we're at a health center in Florida called Hippocrates Health Institute. People come here from all over the world because they have cancer and they have other, diabetes and other serious illnesses, and everything is healed. They have a much higher rate of success of healing, and it's all done through organic, vegan, raw food, and meditation, and alternative therapies like that. And so I think a person could think, okay, I'm going to try something else. Maybe try cleaning my body out. If someone has cancer, they've already been listening to the medical system for too long, and they've been suppressing the symptoms for so many years that finally they have this serious illness, a cancer. The problem is their body is polluted, it's full of toxins. They've got to get rid of the toxins. You're not going to heal it by doing more toxins and more violence. It's not the way. So one has to realize there's other ways of healing based on harmony and based on cleaning the body and meditating and having a positive approach rather than this chemotherapy approach.
Okay, thank you. So relating to what Dr. Eddie said earlier about the lab-grown meat, now I understand that in Singapore, the government has approved the production of self-cultured meat. So let us now go to Singapore. We have a Sister Ping Ru, who is with us, and Sister Ping Ru.
Hello, Dr. Tuttle and brothers and sisters. This has been an inspiring talk. I hear about sexual abuse in schools among my students every now and then. But today is the first time I hear about sexual abuse in animal agriculture. So this afternoon, I'm going to get Dr. Tuttle's book and read up more. I am so inspired, and I am just wondering what made Dr. Tuttle set up the World Peace Diet website? And the second question is, what keeps you going? Because it's very obvious to everyone that you are so passionate and we are so inspired. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And we created the World Peace Diet website basically just to help create a forum for people to learn more about the work that we're doing. And we've been able, right up until March of last year, to do a lot of traveling. I've traveled to over 50 countries in the world, to all 50 states in the United States many times. We've given over 4,000 lectures promoting veganism, and the website has our tour schedule. There's essays that I write, books that are published, the music that we create, Madeline's art of animals, the trainings that we give, the online trainings, the World Peace Diet training program and the facilitator program. so people go more deeply, and then those people can train other people. So all of that is related, I guess, to your second question, what keeps us going, which is basically just, I think, the same thing that keeps you all going. It's just, we know that we're only on this earth for a few decades. Our lives are very brief on this earth. We just have a few days here, really. It goes by very quickly. So for the short time that we're on this earth, just to do the best we can to be part of the solution to the problems rather than just being part of the problem and making things worse. And so I realized many years ago that the most important thing is inner cultivation of the mind and the heart, that's really the foundation of everything. We can never have a healthy world if the individuals are not healthy. And it doesn't help for me to try to change other people if I myself have not changed. So most of the effort really, in many ways, is self-cultivation, to take time every day to meditate and to study and to contemplate and to connect with nature and to make sure that my relationships with the people in my life, with Madeline and with friends and neighbors and people around me are healthy. And then out of that, from that foundation, then to do what I can in the world to help others, to do education efforts and outreach and communications and conferences and so forth. So, but I think the underlying thing is just the sense of a precious human life, right? This human birth is so rare and so precious. And then to have a human birth and then have a healthy body and a healthy mind, to be in a society where we have some freedom, we can actually study the Dharma, we can actually talk about these teachings. We should never take this for granted. We shouldn't let fritter it away. We should take it very seriously and wake up every morning with a sense of gratitude that we have on one more day to do the best we can to be a voice for all sentient beings, to be a voice for animals, to be a voice for people, to be the hands that bring healing, to be the mouth that brings some encouragement, some love and caring to others. I think that's really it. We don't know, we could die anytime. Today could be our last day. We never know. So to make the best of every moment, to make the best of every opportunity that we have. And this life goes by quickly, so make the most of it while we can. It's a very precious, very brief existence that we have here, and we don't know what the next life will be. So it's really important to cultivate our wisdom and compassion in every moment, every second. And I think if we create a vegan movement that's based on inner cultivation rather than just trying to change the world, but to change the one person we can change, which is myself, that be the focus. And then from that to bring the inner peace that we were able to realize and get a glimpse of into our movement. And it's one of the things I love about the Buddhist teaching, about what I know of the Tzu Chi movement in general. It's really based on living this as individuals. So I'm very honored to be able to share these ideas with you and with everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sister Peng Ru. You got any other question?
I'm really so inspired. It has been raining for more than 24 hours in Singapore, non-stop. It is a big thing in Singapore because it's a very rare thing in Singapore. And so I think it's timely to hear the sharing, and because it only inspires me to do more, to spread the message. I've heard so much about the cheese, but I never got to read about the details. So I'm really going to get the book both in English and Mandarin, Chinese languages. I read on the website that's been translated into 16 languages. So I think it shows the extent and the impact throughout the world. So
Yes.
definitely going to share with more teachers and my family and friends about what I've heard and learned from Dr. Tuttle this morning in Singapore right now. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Sister Peng Ru is an educationalist in Singapore, so she has a lot of students following for her. Now, we just for information, Dr. Tuttle, as you speak just now, it's being translated into Mandarin for some of our Mandarin speakers. So I was just been told that we had actually at the peak almost about 330 locked in live to listen to you, okay, around the world. 330, that's a lot. And so we're gonna move on to somewhere nearer to you, to the US. So we have Sister Aichu. All to you, Sister Aichu.
Happy New Year, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Tuttle, for your compassionate, inspiring, and informative talk. Here I have, in 2014, North Bay Vegan Book Club, studying your book, World Peace Diet. At that time, I love your book because I named my son World Peace when he was born in 1986. And I said, wow, World Peace Diet. And then after we read about it, I learned more. And today, I took 2.5 more pages notes from your talk, and we got more tools to convince ourselves and all people around us to be vegan. I have been a vegetarian since 2009, but now I'm going to aim for being a vegan. And thank you for your very convincing talk today. And also, I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
Number 1, as you said, as Buddhists, we know that causes and consequences are related. If we want to promote veganism, we really want to know what are the causes. So from your 40 years of being a vegan, and also thank you for practice what you preach. You are a living, wonderful example of how wonderful it could be to be a vegan. So what are the top 3 causes you've seen that people don't want to be a vegan? And the second question is following that. What are the tools, what are the things we could do to counter those, to remove those causes so we can have a harmonious and peaceful world for everyone?
Okay, so what I think of thank you very much, Aichu. I think, the main causes for people eating animal-based foods, that's your question. Probably the 3 main ones, if I can put it into 3, is one of them certainly is infant indoctrination. This is the main reason, really. It's infant indoctrination. From the time we're born, we're as little infants. Our mothers and fathers and friends, neighbors, relatives, everybody around us is eating animal foods typically, and so we do too. And it's in from the very beginning. And you go to the grocery store, look at little baby food jars, and you'll see turkey and veal and chicken, cheese very often. So as little kids, we get this food, and our body has to adjust itself to those foods, even though they're not foods that we really would naturally eat. Our body has to adapt. It's like if you gave cigarettes to a little kid as soon as they're born, their body would adapt as best it could, but it would get addicted, right? And so we get addicted really in many ways to meat and dairy because our bodies have to adapt to something that's really not natural for us. We're not little cows. We shouldn't be eating dairy. We shouldn't be eating the animal flesh, especially not the amounts that we're eating. So infant indoctrination is probably the biggest reason. It's just, it's what makes it so hard also, because it's my own mother. My mother gave, she cooked the food and she made it. You're questioning your mother and your father, and everyone, your relatives and family and so forth. And then I think the second main reason is, as we get older, it's the social pressure. Social pressure essentially other people, the people around us. We don't want to be different. We love to fit in. We like to be part of the group. We like to eat what everybody else is eating. And food is the main way that we human beings bond. It's over food. When we have a celebration, we always have a feast. We always eat and lots of food. If I show up and say, well, I'm not going to eat your food, it breaks the sense of bondedness. There's a tribalism. We human beings are tribal. We like to be part of a tribe, a group, and food is the main social bonding adhesive that keeps us together is the food. So people are very afraid of not eating the food that other people are eating that are around them. And so that's another primary reason, is just the social pressure to eat what everybody else is eating, and to conform, to conform and be like everybody else around us. And then the third big reason probably is our own individual preferences. Like I just love how ice cream tastes, or I love that kind of cheese, or I love bacon, or whatever it is. We just it's that individual sense of I like this. And also the part of that also is the individual sense of my image, right? Like if I'm a man, I have this image of myself eating these foods. These are manly foods, or whatever it is. Or if I'm a woman, these are foods that are more feminine, but animal-based foods. I just love maybe some kind of yogurt or whatever it is. It becomes part of our self-image. So there's this self-image and taste, how something tastes. Those are the three main reasons. It's other people. It's the fact that we're indoctrinated from infancy, and then for the rest of our lives, we're pressured by society. And then we have our own habits and tastes, and our taste really, it's quite changeable. If we can change our taste pretty easily, but once we get used to something, we usually don't want to change it. We think, well, I like that, and that's the only one I'm going to like. And so I think it's important to realize two things. Number one is these three forces are very powerful. These are powerful forces. Infant indoctrination is powerful. Social pressure is powerful. Individual habits and tastes they're all powerful. But the good news is they're all based on an illusion. They're all ultimately very weak. As soon as any kind of awakening happens in consciousness, all three of those just evaporate. And it happens all the time. Someone will suddenly make the connection. They'll see, oh my gosh, you mean this cheese caused that kind of suffering to a cow? And suddenly their infant indoctrination just evaporates. Social pressure doesn't matter. Their taste goes out the window, and they just change. It happens all the time. So these are powerful forces, but they're also based on illusions. They're based on lies. They're based on falsehoods. We don't need them to be healthy. Taste is something that's very changeable. We can easily get used to different things. Like right now, I've been a vegan for 40 years. I just love, how plant-based foods taste. And it's not difficult to switch over. I have no desire, obviously, for anything else. And so that's the good news. And so that's what I would say. In order for us to help people to make the transition, I think the most important thing is to be an example ourselves, a positive example, make sure we're eating healthy food ourselves. So it's important, I think, as we're vegans, to eat organically grown foods, because if we're not eating organic, we're getting a lot of herbicides, pesticides, fungicide, hormones, residues, all kinds of stuff is in foods. Even if it's vegan, it can be in the food. So it's important that we eat organic plant-based foods, and whole foods also, as much as possible, not eating processed food, because again, there's a lot of preservatives, artificial colors, chemicals, all kinds of chemicals and things. So try to eat food that's healthy, and then be healthy. Take time every day for exercise, for meditation, for connecting with nature, for creating positive relationships, so that we can be a good example of someone who's eating a healthy plant-based diet, and then instead of trying to change other people, that's probably the main point I want to make, is like the idea is like, how can we help other people to change? The best way to help other people change is don't try to change them. Don't try to change people. As soon as I'm trying to change somebody, and they can feel it, and they say no, they start fighting. They start fighting back. I know I would be the same way. If someone came up to me and I could tell they were trying to change me, I would have my boxing gloves on and I'd be trying to protect myself. That's a natural, healthy response. We shouldn't let people change us. If we want to change, we should initiate the change ourselves. So I think the best way to help change other people is to don't try to change them. Just try to change myself. If I myself can actually be a vegan, then the whole world will start to become vegan. What is being a vegan? It's being loving. Veganism is love. That's all it is. It's actually living a life of loving kindness to others, not just theoretically, but actually practically. It's like, I'm not going to pay other people to stab and abuse animals, because that's not loving. That's harmful. It's violent. And so, and I'm going to do the best I can to be kind and caring in my speech and my thoughts and my words and my actions to others, to humans and to animals. That's what being vegan is. Being vegan is being kind and loving to human animals and to non-human animals in every thought, word, and deed, in every relationship, as much as possible to live that. So that's a full-time job. That's something to really work on all the time. I can always become better at that. I can always have a mind that's more filled with love and kindness and generosity and caring and tenderness and mercy and gentleness for others. I can always improve that. I can always increase that. And so I think when our vegan movement becomes a movement of self-transformation to be the change we want to see in the world, to actually live a vegan life with kindness, then our movement will be unstoppable. It'll grow so fast. It'll go, the whole world will go vegan very quickly if we really work on ourselves. The problem is, oh no, I'm not the problem, you're the problem, I got to change you. And then we start trying to change people. And then we get into this whole mentality of how we can strategize and manipulate people and make them change. And that's like animal agriculture. We dominate and exploit animals, and now we're trying to dominate and change other human beings. The whole idea is to abandon all of that and to just try to, like the Buddha said, to enlighten ourselves. And when we do that, then our actions follow naturally. So I think one of the best things we can do, Mahatma Gandhi talked about this word in Sanskrit, satyagraha. Satyagraha. Satya means truth, and graha means power or force. So it's truth force or truth power. And so the idea is, if we just speak our own truth with love and respect, then that's the best way to change others in a positive way, because we're not trying to change them. So, and I think the one statement that is always universally true that we can always say is this: I'm so happy that I realized that the only reason that I was eating animal foods all those years that I did in the past was because I was just following orders. And now I'm not doing it anymore, and it's great. That's it. Don't say anything more. That's all there is to it. I'm so happy that I discovered that the only reason I was eating meat and dairy products was because I was just following orders. And then I realized it wasn't a good idea, so I'm not doing it anymore, and it's fantastic. If we just say that, and if it's true for us, it's really the truth. I'm so happy. It's really, I can say that. I'm so happy that I realized I was just eating meat because I was following orders from well-meaning people, but they weren't good orders. It wasn't a good idea. Eating meat and dairy was harmful to animals, harmful to me, harmful to the earth. So I'm not doing it, and it's fantastic. So when someone else hears that, it goes right in to them in a very loving way, because it's just truth. It's just my truth. I'm not saying you should do this, you should do that. You're bad because you're not doing what I'm doing. I'm just saying I'm happy because I figured this out. And that's all I'm saying. And the other person will on a deep level will say, wow, well, that's true for me too. The only reason I'm eating meat and dairy is because I'm just following orders too. They'll say that to themselves eventually. They'll realize that. And then nobody wants to just live their life as a robot, just doing things that are harmful because they're following orders. And so you've planted a seed, and the person's own compassion and wisdom will water the seed. And that plant will grow inside of them, and it'll be vegan. It'll be a vegan plant. You know, their life will move in that direction because you just planted a truth seed, a seed of truth, because you were just honest. You just were loving and respectful and just shared your truth, satyagraha. And I think if we as a movement can just share our own truth in a loving way with people and say, look, I've learned how to make this delicious food. It's healthy and it's great. And I just think it's fantastic. And without trying to change people, then they're not fighting back. They're just open to the teaching. And I think that's the future for our movement. And I think it is happening. We are learning and we are going in that direction. And I think the Buddhist Dharma is one of the greatest ways, because the Buddhist Dharma always encourages us to work on ourselves first. And from that standpoint, we can then help others. So that's a great question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tuttle. Thank you, Sister Aichu. We have actually exceeded our time. And so is it possible, Dr. Tuttle, that I could just pose a question from this question that came from one of the participants, if I could take that as the last question, if that's okay with you. The question was, so the question was, how are there any, what would you advise to summarize it, to promote veganism to the community? Now, I think the mind of people is such that if you indoctrinate veganism, they will fight back. And the question is, how would you go around convincing that obviously they want to change? We can't indoctrinate on them, but the question is, how do we get them to buy in so that they are willingly wanting to do that?
Right. So I think, you know, the basic idea, like I just said, is to avoid the temptation of trying to indoctrinate people or to try to change them, but to create a context. The more we can create a context for people to become, to see the benefits of moving to a plant-based way of eating and living, you know, a vegan way of eating and living. So I would say, number one, like I said, satyagraha, speaking our own truth. We can do that through videos, through social media, through giving cooking classes, through conversations, through writing books, through making music, doing art, you know, any kind of communication. That's helpful. I think another thing, we're in this kind of strange thing now with social distancing and wearing masks, and hopefully that's not going to go on forever. But I could see like vegan restaurants, for example, where people can actually taste the food, serving vegan meals. One of the things I love, Tzu Chi, is giving vegan meals very often to people who have fires or hurricanes or disasters in their area, so they can realize that they're being loved, and they're being loved with plant-based meals. To create festivals. I mean, one of the things that was really booming for more and more up until recently was vegan and vegetarian veg fests and festivals, where people can come and just learn different, about food and so forth. But any kind of way that we can help people to think about these ideas. I think also some people tend to be more oriented towards doing things politically. So I think, introducing legislation to protect animals or to encourage people eating a healthier diet. There's lots of groups that are working in that direction to help, educate people in that way. There's some people that are there's some doctors that are working to help educate doctors about the benefits of a plant-based diet. And these are all things. I think the most important thing is to, whatever we do it with kindness and love and respect. That's the most important thing. To treat other human beings the way we would treat cows and pigs and chickens, right? Treat them with love and respect. It's easy to treat these animals with kindness because they're not offending us maybe, but other humans can be more challenging. So that's why the inner work is so important. It's important for us, I think, to meditate regularly, so that when it's not so much what we're saying to people, it's how we say it. It's who we are as we're speaking. That's what people really hear. They hear that the actual words and concepts and the ideas are much less important. The most important thing is how we are, how our gestures are, just the way we are. If we're smiling, if we're kind and loving, if we're listening, if we're healed. I think as vegans, we have to realize we're healers. We're here to heal the world. We're here to help relieve the wounds of people. And that's through love and through light. You don't create more veganisms by blaming and hating and shaming and criticizing and telling people they're wrong and they're bad. You don't create more light by darkness. You create it by light. So I think more light, more love, more kindness, more caring, and working on ourselves so that we really are that way. That is the way forward, and that each one of us has unique gifts. Like Madeline, my wonderful wife, she's wonderful at painting. Other people are maybe wonderful at making videos. Other people are maybe wonderful at just talking to people or making delicious food or grow. We need people growing food and gardening. And I think there's something for everyone. We all have our unique talents and gifts. We only have a short time, to cultivate them. We need people who are maybe help make vegan investments or businesses. Whatever it is, meditating is very important. There's something for everyone, I think, to contribute. And it's all important. There's nobody that's more important than anybody else. It's all equally important that we do the best we can.
Thank you. Everybody. Thank you, Dr. Tuttle. Certainly, I enjoy the philosophy behind veganism. That part is interesting. That's all the time we have.
Hey, Gaan. Very grateful to everyone for the wonderful support, and definitely Dr. Will, what a superb, amazing session. Trust that many will transform to vegan after this talk.